I'm Patrick Bailey with iQList. Today is June 11th, 2022, and in this video I'm going to get a first look at the double-sized T-Rex skull 3D printed with a 0.8 millimeter nozzle at a 0.4 layer height. Okay, so here we are partially through this print. It's going to take another day to get everything done, and also we had screw-ups. So for printing this guy in 0.8, it actually, compared to the 0.15, it's not bad. It looks pretty good. Now the teeth you can see are a little jagged, but I think for most things when you show things off, this is not bad. If you were printing one for yourself, I'd do the 0.15. It takes a lot longer, but if you're putting something for the classroom or something that doesn't need I think it's fine. But the only issue we had with this so far, I had two issues with this top, with the jaw, is there's a little bit too much here. So I didn't put any supports. I think I might need to put some supports here, and that might solve my problem. We'll see if that, I'm going to probably try that the next time I print this out. Another thing I did, these rods are in 0.8, and they fit in just fine, but for some reason there's not quite as much give. Like I tried to attach this to the 0.15, and see if I can do this. They're not, you can see there's more of a gap there. They're not quite as flush. So for some reason, I just think I need to make them a slight bit shorter, which I'll do. So I'll go re-render them slightly shorter, and I think that'll solve that problem because eventually I want to glue these all together, right? So I'm happy with it overall. A few tiny issues which I think can be resolved, but overall, and even this, that's not too bad. No one will notice that too much. But then I was hoping to kind of show the whole skull top in this video. But we had failure. So this is my first failure. I just wasn't paying attention and I ran out of filament in the middle of the night. So that's a bummer. But it did get enough to satisfy a few tests. So as far as, this is a 0.15 printed lower jaw. And of course, fits just fine, not an issue. I figured that would be fine. And then, if we look at everything underneath, this one printed really well. I mean, there's a slight little bit here, but it's inside, nothing to complain about. I don't think this really needs any supports. Everything looks pretty good. And also, it did get the thread completed, so I was excited about that. So I do have this bolt just to test it. And you're gonna have to, I already kind of used this bolt to tap it. So kind of going in and out, and I had to get a wrench because it was a little tight in there, but I had to go back and forth. And eventually, I tapped the whole thing, and here's probably a little tighter at the end. But at 0.8, thread works fine. So the big test I was concerned with, not a problem. But now, another thing I noticed, weight. Even though I'm still using the same infill, 20%, you gotta think it's laying down this bead thicker, and it's heavier. I didn't think about that. So I'm using more material. So if I weigh this original 0.51, you can see we're 0.274 kilograms. And this one, same thing, 0.346. So unless you tone down, I mean, you could, if you're worried about getting the price similar based on filament, you're gonna have to tone down the infill a little bit, which I'm not going to. But it's one of those things, you go faster, but it's going to cost you, I guess it costs you in two realms if you're using the same settings. It's going to cost you in two realms. One, you're going to be heavier with the same level infill, but you can lower that. And then of course you're going to lose the detail. And I guess maybe I can give one more close-up shot on the teeth. And that's why if I was printing one for myself, I'd go with a 0.15. But I'm going to try to print a few more for the upcoming homeschool conference. I need to go fast. And I don't think this is bad. I mean, if I handed both of these to someone who wasn't into 3D printing, they'd go, what's the difference? But of course, you'd probably want to charge them differently. If you want to do more detail, if you were doing this as a service, you have to make sure you're covering your costs, and time is part of the cost, so you want to probably charge more for one that has more detail. And when it doesn't, you'd probably charge less or something. And people might be fine with that. You put this up on a shelf, no one's gonna get that close to it, and it's gonna look fine. So with that, we'll kind of go over some of the thoughts and details and some of the numbers, like the weight. I don't have all the details yet, but we'll do another video when actually everything is done. So, okay, let's talk through this and go over some numbers. Now, normally I always like to keep things simple, use the defaults as best I can if it makes sense. I mean, 90% of the time I don't want to tweak things too much in Prusa Slicer, and therefore I'm usually using a 0.4 millimeter nozzle at a 0.15 layer height. But in this case, because we do want that speed, we want to do the 0.8 nozzle. Now, I've done videos on there, and hopefully I'll put a link to one of them, how to switch out your nozzle. So you do need to switch out your nozzle. Go look at some videos if you've never done that. You need to go buy a nozzle, of course, and I recommend the E3D 0.8 nozzles that I buy. Buy a good nozzle, don't buy a cheap one, because they last longer. But with that, if you're using the Prusa Slicer, you need the configuration. So if you haven't ever done this, go to Configuration Wizard in the Prusa Slicer. I need to install some new stuff, but I'm going to skip this for now, for the purpose of this video. And this guy will come up. And then you'll go click on Prusa FFF, or whatever printer you may have. And there's a lot of default configuration settings for this, you know. So I don't make my own. I don't tweak them to a great extent, so I like to use the default. So you go here, find what you have. I have an i3 MK3, not an MK3S, but you find out what you have, and then choose all the ones you need. So I would just choose them all, 0.25, 0.6, 0.8. I kind of wish they had a 1.0, because it'd be fun to go try one that big too. And I can make a 1.0. I just don't like to, I'm in no, I don't want to fiddle with it. I just want to use something someone else made that works really well. That's the future. I don't want to, I like to have the ability to tweak, but I don't want to tweak very often. So choose those, you'll hit finish, it'll install them all, and you'll be good to go. And then from there, you would choose, come down here and choose, you know, in this case, Prusa i3 Mark III 0.8 nozzle. And then I'm choosing a 0.4 quality draft, and that'll speed everything up. And there's my, oh, I said 20%, but I guess it's 15. I kind of forget what I normally use. 15% info. Slice that bad boy up. And so there's that. So with that, let's go over the numbers for this specific one. So I don't have all the numbers in, but when I do, I'll make another video and go over all the details. But where we are right now, just for this piece, for the jaw, it took 9 hours and 19 minutes to print. It took 8.3 cents of electricity, and it weighs 0.342 kilograms at $20 per kilogram, comes out to $6.84. So total in on this is $6.93. But now let's examine the numbers for the 0.4 nozzle that I used version. That one, I'll kind of throw this in here so you can kind of overlap a little bit. That one took 35 hours and 30 minutes. It took 29.8 cents of electricity, and it weighs 0.268 kilograms, which comes out to $5.36 for just the filament. So all in on that is $5.67. So if you look at the numbers real quick, using the same infill, and of course you can lower the infill and probably get the same price, but I'm going to leave it as is. So as is, it's 22% more cost because we're using more filament. Again, you can tweak that. But also it's taking 26% of the time, roughly a 4-time speed increase. So that's a big deal, where you can make 4 of these for every one you're going to make another one. And again, I would recommend, if you're going to make one for yourself, you got the time. Just go make a nice one, get all that detail, be done with it, and you won't have to think about it. But if you're making one for a classroom, you're making one for display, I think that 4 times increase on that 0.8 nozzle is worth it. It still looks good. And you get that throughput out there. So more to come as I get the whole thing done. I'll do a whole video on everything. I think it's going to look good. I think it's going to be adequate. And also, once it's done, I will put it up on Printables. Although technically it is on Printables. You could go get the version I have out there right now and just reslice it. But I'll put a 0.8 version out there with everything done just for the convenience, you know. But with all that, let's wrap this up with a reminder that 3D printing is an engineering adventure that you're on. You can develop your skills, your knowledge, and you can take this so many ways. You can make a business out of this. You can teach others, and you can make some amazing designs. So design it, engineer it. Joel Telling, the 3D printing nerd, recently put out a video named Installing an E3D Rev 06 in Prusa MK3. I would recommend going to watch it. I've noticed this new system for E3D, and I think it's a next step on making 3D printing more home-friendly. I have thought for years, and talked with some friends about it, that we need some more cartridge-like pieces for the 3D printer, and this is one. Swapping out a nozzle is a chore right now. Doable, but a chore. Those of us who aren't handy don't think much about it. Those of us who are handy don't think much about it, but it's a pain for most folks. I would like parts of the 3D printer that need to be replaced or swapped out on a daily, monthly, or even once a year basis to be easy to do, so that I could teach and have your average 10-year-old handle it easily enough. I think this system is one big step in that direction.